Okay, so we've been talking with each other while waiting. It really gives us great pleasure to have Morse ambassador, former ambassador for global criminal justice. He is currently the dean of the law school at the Liberty University in Washington, D.C. And he's busybody during his stay here. Few days that he's here, he's been pulled from many different organizations to speak. And it's really great that we're able to have you here at the Yonsei University's GSIS, Graduate School of International Studies. We're a professional school where a lot of these students are focusing on international relations, security, business, even Korean studies. And last week, Alex, was it? Last week that we had someone from the UN office, UN Seoul office, the Human Rights Council has a UN structure, and somebody came here. And so I think it will be a good balance and good addition to continue to talk about North Korean human rights from your sort of legal perspective, particularly in terms of criminal justice and possibly prosecutory mechanisms. So, is this the first time at Yonsei? Yeah. Oh, that's right. You were here before. So we'd like to welcome you back, and I hope you have a good session with the students. I guess you will give some talk, and then hopefully there will be ample time to engage in Q&As and comments. So, without further ado, more time.
Hi, good afternoon. I actually have a bunch of ties to Yonsei University. My mother and my mother-in-law were part of the same graduating class from Yonsei. And my sister, she actually got her medical degree from Yonsei. I merely did the 5-week summer language Korean program. It is my direct connection with Yonsei to try to improve my Korean. And so, but it was a good experience. And so I do have a number of these ties to the university. I also had an opportunity before to study some of the early period of Christian missions in this country. And part of that history is the formation of Yonsei when the founder, Underwood, I think, had been greatly involved in that effort. And so that was another exposure that I had from a historical perspective. I had the opportunity to serve as a U.S. Ambassador at Large for Global Criminal Justice. One of my predecessors, Ambassador Stephen Rapp, would jokingly say that he was not at large, meaning he wasn't wanted for some crime, but he was involved in seeking justice for mass atrocity crimes, genocide, war crimes, crimes against humanity, all around the world. That's what the at-large designation means, where you apply a certain thematic area all across the world. And so sometimes people ask me, so what country were you an ambassador? And because country ambassadors are the most common type of ambassadorship that's there, followed by international organization ambassadorships like ambassador to the UN or UNESCO or any number of international organizations. But there's only a handful of us who were serving as ambassadors at large. And so the ambassador at large position for global criminal justice is actually unique in foreign ministries. It only exists in the US government. And so that is another aspect of it. It'd be great if there were some others that cropped up in other governments around the world. But up to now, the only government that has had that has been the US government. My interest in mass atrocity, crimes, and justice in regards to North Korea well predated my ambassadorship. It was something that I was keenly interested in as a scholar, and so I had been involved in publishing works. I also taught a North Korea seminar. This was, I think, unique among American law schools to have a North Korea seminar in a US law school. But it's been more than work and a job. For me, it's something of a life mission and a passion, and something that I've been pursuing before the ambassadorship, after the ambassadorship. For me, this is something of a life mission. And so, when you look at mass atrocity crime situations around the world, I'm not aware of a more serious, graver situation of injustice through mass atrocity crimes than what has been going on in North Korea. I'm aware of many situations in the world, and I do not say that lightly or easily, but consider some of these facts in regards to what has happened in North Korea. There has been the crime, mass atrocity crime of extermination that has been happening in North Korea to the tune of 15 million lives. 15 million. In a country of 24 million, think about that as a percentage, as a proportion of the overall populace. This is a staggering sum, and I think we have to be careful not to fall into what Joseph Stalin said. He said that one life lost is a tragedy. 1 million lives lost is a statistic. But behind each one of those numbers that form the staggering number of 15 million was somebody's son or daughter, somebody's friend, was somebody's loved one, with a personal history and a story like you and I have in living our lives. They had one too. And yet their lives were snuffed out by this regime in North Korea. In addition to that, North Korea has had a network of concentration camps, often located between mountains in order to disguise and to hide what they actually are. And when the North Korean government has been confronted about these, they try to pawn them off as farming villages or things along those lines. No, these are concentration camps. Think Hitler's concentration camps. Think the concentration camps of Mao. Think of the Gulag of the former Soviet Union. These are the sorts of camps that we're talking about here. And the sorts of crimes that are committed inside these camps are so heinous that merely to describe them in a detached way is almost too much for polite conversation. Because the means and methods of torture that are employed are almost unspeakable. The bulk of the people who end up in one of these concentration camps never make it out. They die inside of these camps. And what's worse is that you can be in one of these camps not because of anything you've done, but because of guilt by association, where Kim Il-sung said, 3 generations of the seed of counter-revolutionaries must be punished. And so you could be born in a total control zone concentration camp for no other reason than an alleged disloyalty by one of your grandparents. Shin Dong-hyuk tells the story of what happened through a correspondent, a writer named Blaine Hardin in Escape from Camp 14. It was the first book-length account of somebody who was born and lived the first 20-some years of his life in one of these total control zone concentration camps. As more and more refugee and defector testimonies accumulate, there is an increasingly large mountain of evidence of these mass atrocity crimes that are committed in these concentration camps. But even if you're not in a concentration camp, the whole country is like one jail of a country. Did you know it is a high crime to leave North Korea? Simply to leave. The guards at the border are ordered to shoot, to kill on sight anyone who tries to leave, including children. Including children. And the whole structure of North Korean society is such that's all structured based on perceived loyalty to the Kim regime, the Kim dynasty. So your housing, your clothing, your food, your educational opportunities, your work opportunities, these are all things that are determined by the perceived loyalty of you and your family to the Kim dynasty and to the Kim regime. One two-word description of the North Korean regime is criminal cult, because the Kims have pretended to be deities. Kim Il-sung is referred to as the eternal president of North Korea. And so there is an extensive cult of worship of the supreme rulers of North Korea, starting with Kim Il-sung, then to Kim Jong-il, and now presently to Kim Jong-un, grandfather, father, and son. And if you're a North Korean citizen who is starving, merely for asking the question of, why am I starving, is enough to merit severe punishment. There was a little girl at the age of 7 who stole a kernel of corn because she was starving. She was so hungry. And that was enough for her to be beaten to death in front of her classmates by the teacher. Some people look at the dystopia of 1984, George Orwell's novel, and think, surely there could be no society like that on planet Earth. Well, North Korea is 1984 and then some. 1984 on steroids, if you will. I had lunch with a couple of defectors from North Korea who were prominent elite members of North Korea. And the surveillance is so pervasive, the spying is so pervasive. In essence, everyone is a spy against everyone else, including your own family members. Such that it's very hard for anyone in North Korea who thinks that the regime is unjust to be able to communicate together, to be able to band together, to be able to cooperate together. It's so controlled that it becomes next to impossible to be able to do so without literally risking your life. That's the nature of the regime there. So children who go to school and they're asked to find out answers of questions that they can ask to their parents. And depending on what the answers to the questions are, those parents may be tortured, may be put to death, may be sent to one of these concentration camps, the whole family. And a lot of times, the children don't know any better, and because the teacher at school said you have to ask these questions of your parents, they ask. And the answers could determine what happens to that whole family. It could literally be a matter of life or death. That is the nature of the regime in North Korea. Concurrently, there's another crisis. There's a security crisis that is posed by the 4th largest military on planet Earth. Did you know, after the US, China, and Russia, North Korea has more military units than any other military on the planet. Did you know that? They have a large number of units. Having said that, it's not necessarily the most technologically cutting edge or up to date, but in terms of sheer numbers, it is a vast sum of military units that they have. Tanks, planes, soldiers, etc. On top of that, they have all manners of weapons of mass destruction. Chemical weapons, biological weapons, and probably the best known among them are the nuclear weapons. They have already demonstrated that they have the range to be able to send a missile not only to hit anywhere in the United States of America, but they have the range to be able to shoot over the United States of America. That has been demonstrated. The nuclear tests that they've engaged in, independent assessments of them have shown radiation levels that are consistent with an actual nuclear weapon. And so they have all manners of weapons of mass destruction at their disposal. And so this is another crisis, the security crisis of North Korea. That they have the ability, through the sheer number of units, to wreak enormous damage, potentially, upon any land upon which they turn these weapons to use, potentially. There are many who want to cordon off the human rights matters away from the security issues and object to human rights matters being talked about together with the security matters. But what I would want to propose to you is that addressing both concurrently increases the chances of solving either or both of them. And that there are actually ways in which addressing both together can reinforce and increase the likelihood of being able to come to some sort of positive resolution. For example, in the Helsinki process that was used in regards to the former Soviet Union, you had both human rights issues as well as security matters being addressed concurrently in that process. And as you may know from history, in that process, the former USSR crumbled and dissolved. If we deal with the human rights issues together with the security issues, it actually provides negotiation leverage for being able to address the security crisis as well. Why? It's because the North Korean leadership fears prosecution. Some have said that this is the thing they fear above all other things. If that is true, even if that's close to true, then robustly addressing the mass atrocity crimes and the human rights issues can in turn be used as negotiation and diplomatic leverage in resolving the security crisis as well. How could accountability happen with respect to North Korea? There are multiple ways. Let me give you one three-tiered proposal of how accountability can happen. Number one, there could be a hybrid tribunal that's part domestic and part international that addresses those who are most responsible for the worst mass atrocity crimes that could be set up and pursued. There could also be a Truth and Reconciliation Commission that deals with those who are least culpable for these crimes and Truth and Reconciliation Commissions tend to have less draconian punishments, and they try to encourage the truth to be spoken about what's been committed, but also reconciliation with the victims and their families. And so this is something that's been used. There are sometimes various names that are applied to these mechanisms, but this has been used in various places around the world as well. Finally, there is the possibility of domestic prosecution. I just had opportunities earlier today to speak with people here at the highest levels of the South Korean government about this. But according to the South Korean constitution, North Koreans are Korean citizens. Therefore, there's personal jurisdiction over North Koreans. In addition to that, it is possible in the Korean domestic legal system, the South Korean domestic legal system, to be able to indict somebody in absentia, meaning you can indict them without them being present inside the court or inside the country of South Korea. Therefore, it is possible even to bring a prosecution against Kim Jong-un immediately and to indict him. What would be the impact of that? There would be then a warrant for his arrest. There could be the use of various different international entities, whether Interpol or others, to try to capture Kim Jong-un. And this would put a tremendous amount of pressure upon him, both when he's traveling, but even when he's not traveling, because of the standing indictment that would be there. When I was serving as ambassador at large, I was responsible for the War Crimes Rewards Program, which offered rewards up to $5 million for tips leading to the arrest or apprehension of those who were at least indictees of hybrid, mixed, or international tribunals. And if Kim Jong-un was indicted, this would put a great deal of pressure upon him. He and the rest of the top leadership of North Korea are deathly afraid of prosecution. And this is an important step towards justice. Indeed, the research has found that the single biggest prevention measure that can be taken to prevent mass atrocity crimes is to have robust accountability for mass atrocity crimes that have already happened. And so, at once, one could address the past mass atrocity crimes while concurrently, through the same process, help to prevent future ones. And so accountability is the most important way to prevent mass atrocity crimes. If you look at the places where these prosecutions have taken place, you generally see a pattern of them not recurring in those places. After Nazi Germany had the prosecutions against it in the Nuremberg trials, never again since then has Germany engaged in anything along those lines. The same was true of the Tokyo trials conducted against leadership under Hirohito's regime in World War II in Japan. Japan has not engaged in such things after that, or in the former Yugoslavia, or in Rwanda, or in, pick your place, Cambodia, Sierra Leone. You see examples of this in various places around the world. And so accountability is not just an issue of addressing the injustices of the past, it is a means of preventing injustices in the future. And in fact, the most important factor to do so. Thus, it would be conducive to the resolution of both crises to include the human rights crisis, the mass atrocity crisis, with respect to North Korea, and to concurrently address them would be the best way to try to resolve either or both of these crises that exist with respect to North Korea.